Right, are we going to behave getting into the episode? Are we going to behave? Yes? I know Sam will. I'm looking at Karl, I'm looking at you. You know I'm looking at you. Anyway,
I'm very
ladies
well
and
behaved.
gentlemen, welcome back to Hurdle the Line. This episode is entitled Half a Century Not Out. And why is that, gentlemen? Because it is episode 50 of Hurdle the Line. And before we really truly get going, I just want to say what an absolute pleasure it has been for the first 50 episodes to work with yourselves and to work with the lads over on the review team all the way up to 50 episodes, and here's to the next 50. And to join me, your host, Fletch, on this podcast, this ever so big milestone, is my wonderful co-hosts, Karl and Sam. Gentlemen, how are we on this evening?
Good.
Yep, all good. All good. A nice bye week for my team. Now I have to go through the pain for the next 4 weeks, but yeah, all good. All good.
Lovely. So, couple of things about today. You may notice from the fact that Karl and I are dressed for the occasion. Sam did attempt to this. Sam did attempt to be dressed for the occasion, but unfortunately did not have the costume. It is Christmas jumper day, not for the people who are listening, but for us. So I have come in my only intact Christmas jumper. Karl, let's come on, show us yours. We can only see your shoulders.
Yeah, so mine's basically like a Santa Claus one. So it cuts the beard off and the face is obviously me.
We'd love to see
Whack.
it. We'd love to see it. And Sam's got a Rams jersey on, which is also wonderful to see. We're very happy for it. What I notice we haven't celebrated yet today, and I'm a little bit upset about this, is also International Sound Engineers Day. I've not had a single present. I've not had a single card through the mail. I'm partly heartbroken, but I did throw this to Carl off behind the scenes when we were getting ready. Can you think of why today, the 12th of December, is International Sound Engineers Day?
I don't know, but I guess it's some kind. I think it's some kind of corny reason why.
Sam, can you figure it out?
Today's the what, 12th of December?
Yep.
So
If you
be
write
some it'd be something to do with 1212.
it is. Think about it written down numerically next to each.
1212.
One,
There
two,
we
one,
go.
two.
There we go.
So it is International Sound Engineers
I was
because
right. It was something corny.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
right.
The date is 1212. This is not congruative to the actual podcast. I just thought it's fun to shout out and also shame everybody for not buying me a present on International Sound Engineers Day, even though I kind of left that behind a few months ago. More importantly, we are here to talk about week 15 of the NFL. We're into the last four games of the regular season. No more bye weeks, just all out football. And we're here for it. Before we get got, have we got any news from the last couple of days since Monday to throw in there? I
Two
haven't
bits
got
of
anything.
two bits of news that have come through regarding the NFL international games. It got confirmed.
Oh, yes.
I think it got confirmed either Monday or Tuesday that the NFL have decided that there will be a game played in Berlin at the Olympic Stadium in 2025. Um, no idea who the host team or the road team is going to be, so I have to keep an eye out for that. Just as long as they've actually put two fairly good teams in there and compared to what we saw from this year. But anyway, I digress. And the other bit of news I saw earlier on today, and apparently is still rumored, not yet confirmed, but it's rumored. Ireland could be getting their first NFL game at Croke Park next year as well
September.
at September, and apparently the host team is potentially going to be the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have a strong following in Ireland anyway, don't they? And they have the link
Definitely,
there
yeah.
anyway, so it makes
Well,
it makes a lot of sense for them to have a game there.
well, if you follow the pattern they've done in recent years, they've gone with team when they play a game in London or in Germany, the home team tends to be a team with marketing rights in that country. Steelers are the only one, I believe, with the Republic of Ireland and have the whole island of Republic of Northern Ireland in there as their for their marketing. So it makes triply the most sense. Um, and one of the reasons is why I genuinely think that that game in Berlin will have the Detroit Lions in it because the Lions have marketing rights in Germany, and Amon-Ra St. Brown speaking fluent German is just the marketing opportunity there is too good for the NFL to pass up on.
And also,
Is it
go on.
likely that they'll have that Ireland game, if it's rumored to be true in September, to be
Mhm.
the week after or to coincide with the college game? Obviously, not be the same weekend, but potentially looking at the only problem is then if it would then be back to back weekends, and it'd be the first weekend of the season would be in Ireland. Then I suppose we had the first week in
Bill?
Brazil this year.
At the
Yeah, we
first
did.
week of
Yeah,
Brazil this
so
year, and I think Brazil will have a game again next year. I think they will. So it could be potentially. Remember that they've got three to. I think they play 3 or 4 weeks in September, so it could be any one of those four.
I just think it would probably be I can just see the marketing process for having two games back to back in Ireland, where you would then be able to buy packages for both the college game and the Steelers or whoever it is game.
Potentially. However, having the NFL and NCAA or Aer Lingus whatnot
That's true.
try and make that happen is probably going to be a logistical nightmare.
It
And
will.
you think that for 3 weeks on the bounce then in Ireland, in Dublin, you'll have Oasis at Croke Park 1 week. A week later, you'll have week zero, and then a week after that, you'll have an NFL game. I think there's going to be. I would imagine that Dublin itself just might say, "Look, we want a break for a minute. Just give us a week." Because that I think
We're
got to be a
running out of
lot.
Guinness. The plants on emergency
Yeah.
supplies.
That's
One
a
thing I don't think they'll ever run out of is Guinness. I
but
don't think
that
it's possible.
that's a
Save
lot
it.
of people descending on Dublin and traveling in. Because you imagine like that the Crook Park gig, it is what it is. But like, yeah, Oasis are going to do a lot of different gigs, but a lot of people will be traveling in from all over to see that, and the same with the NFL game, and probably the same with the college football game. So I imagine you might want to just give the city of Dublin a little bit of reprieve within that. Um, but yeah, any other news that's come through?
There was some news.
Uh,
There was some news a few hours ago, and that is. Let me just scroll down here. The Broncos they have agreed on a 4-year, $82 million contract extension for left tackle Garrett Bowles. They've locked in Bo Nix's blindside for the next 4 years. 82 million contract extension is with an upside to 86 million. He gets 42 million guaranteed. He was one of the premium tackles that were going to be in this year's in next year's free agency. Now he has now been locked up and signed up by Denver. So well done to Garrett Bowles on getting that big contract. So another premium tackle comes off the list. Not good for needy teams who need tackle help.
Lovely. Sam, did you have something there?
yeah, just Drake Greenlaw is going to be elevated for the Rams game tonight
Yeah.
after having 10 months off from his unfortunate Achilles injury. I don't like to see players get injured, but I don't particularly like Dre Greenlaw. So when he went down on the sidelines trying to run on the pitch, I did kind of laugh, but it's not funny to laugh about injuries. But yes, he's going to be back for that game. So of all the games for him to come back to, of course he comes back for the Rams game.
Yeah. Look, at the end of that, it's not my proudest moment, but I won't let you sit on this island on your own. I didn't shed a tear when Aaron Rodgers tore his.
No,
Maybe is the word and I'll use. I didn't shed a tear for that one. It's fine.
I've watched Greenlaw,
Dreamlaw.
yeah, smack Stafford across the face and get away with it. So I will never like that bloke. Apart from the fact that I don't like who he is anyway. Don't like the way he plays football.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Right. Anything else of note before we get on to the main topic of the episode?
Two receivers have been wavered in midweek. Kadarius Toney was at the Cleveland Browns. He's now been wavered. And KJ Osborne of the New England Patriots, he's also been wavered and he's been picked up in on waivers by the Commanders. So
Okay.
there's a two receivers to look out for.
There's also,
Okay.
I think, an O-liner. Dallas have signed Braden Daniels to their practice squad.
Zach Martin's out for
Um,
the rest of the season, so that kind
yeah,
of makes sense.
and then the other one that I saw, um, Jakeem Grant has been signed to the Falcons practice squad.
Lovely stuff. Lovely. Um, as we get on to week 15, I do want to talk a bit about the ending to week 14 because they didn't get to talk about that on the review show. Did either of you get to watch much of the game in Dallas?
Sorry, what you mean, the Monday night game? Because
Yeah.
you're
The,
Sam
the
just yeah.
Cincy Cowboys game.
Yeah.
I was more
Uh,
paying close attention to the Simpsons one, if I'm not mistaken. If I'm very honest with you, who the hell let Barney Grumble actually make him a running back? The bloke can't go 2 feet without falling over an arse over tit, and yeah, you got him as a running back. That's just like, this is weird. Um,
Yeah.
but no, overall it was another fun game. But oh, good grief, the Cowboys continue to find their. No, I'm not gonna stick my hat on. It's getting tedious now. Um, they find new ways to screw up a game, and and once again they get a block. They get a blocked punt. And the first thing you do as on the opposite side of the ball is you either retrieve it or you leave it alone. Because once that player then touches it, it becomes a live ball. And I just don't understand the IQ of that player who decided to try and grab for it and mishandled it so badly. He needs firing on the spot. You don't see that in Pop Warner football. That's just horrendously bad.
Yeah.
Um, Bengals didn't put up the points I thought they would have done. If it 27-20, I think it ended overall. Um, but you could just tell this whole fan, the Bengals are sincerely on Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase. That's what that team is. Their defense is nothing. They really need some surgery on the defensive side of the ball. Um, the Cowboys, well, they're pretty much now done. They don't think they'll make the playoffs now. They're not mathematically out, but it does look like what 8 losses now. It looks a little bit. It looks a bit. It looks like they're dead. Looks like they're done and dusted now.
I did see somewhere that there's a way that the Bengals can still make the playoffs, but it would require them winning out.
Yeah.
And I think was it the Broncos losing three of their last games, the Miami losing two of their last three of their last games, and then one other team also losing two of their last games. It was something ridiculous, and they would essentially get in on a 9-8.
They've got
It
to
ain't
get
gonna
in.
happen. It's unlikely to happen. I
They
think
got the
they.
Eagles in week 17.
I mean, that'd be a win and a half if they got that, wouldn't it?
Um, I think it's crazy though, because again, I think what Joe Burrow threw for 359 yards, three touchdowns, interception. The I just that he's I can't get over just how good Joe Burrow has been this season. I mean, you look at I keep looking at that Bengals record and having to pinch myself sometimes because he has been that good this year. And Jamar Chase just went off when I really needed him to as well. Because I was against Tom this week in the Hurdle the Line League, and it was playoff time. It got me a bye week. This Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow earned me a bye week this week. I'm very happy with that one. T Higgins, ha. But it's been so good, and I do want to throw a quick mention and a quick shout out there to what Karl has said. I did also watch a good chunk of the Disney version, the Simpsons version.
Mhm.
Ralph Wiggum scoring touchdowns. Homer throwing touchdowns, absolutely. The whole thing was brilliant. It was a lot better. The Toy Story one last year was good, the Simpsons one this year was even better. It was brilliant. I, I genuinely, I really, really enjoyed it.
I think it's the perfect. When they find out it did Nickelodeon are doing like not Nickelodeon, but the NFL would like do like these games where it's a different way of actually going through the commentary and that sort of thing. So you had Toy Story, you had The Simpsons. I think you had SpongeBob. I think at one point, even though
Nickelodeon do that one
even
every year, yeah.
yeah, Nickelodeon. So they cameo it over and over. And I think if you've got young children and you want to introduce them to the game, yeah, you can introduce them to the game, but it also has a blend of what they watch currently as well.
Yeah.
So it kind of works in between the two. I mean, you get it one game a year. It's not going to happen there all the time. But I think that's how you get the younger audience involved in this as well.
And it's an alternative. It's not you say that, but it's an alternative feed. You don't have to watch it. You can watch the game as normal, as intended by the football gods initially. Like before Disney or Nickelodeon get their hands on it. You can that's just an alternative feed that you can whack on.
Mm.
But it's it does scare me a little that technology is getting this good. That we can do this live and have it work. It does scare me a little bit knowing that technology is getting that good. But with that, the oh hang on, let me get the tab back up then. I've unfortunately closed a tab that I shouldn't have done.
Trent Williams is out for our game,
Oh dear. Well, not
and
for you, but
Nick Bosa might be out as well. He's a pre-game test.
interesting. But with that game, that sends both the Bengals and the Cowboys both on 5-8. The Cowboys still have only one game at home in 2024, and that was
At,
last
le-
week against the Giants.
at least they have won a game at home. They are
That is
no
true.
longer the only team in 2024 to have played in that stadium and not won. Like before, that was just embarrassing. Now it's just looks sad.
Yeah, yeah. We'll go with that one. We'll go with that.
When the Cowboys lose, America wins. That's kind of how it goes.
Oh, I go with the phrase. It's similar to what I used to use about certain other soccer clubs in the United Kingdom. Is I hate the Green Bay Packers because I'm a Lions fan. I hate the Dallas Cowboys because I'm a human. Um,
So you hate
was-
Tottenham then, yeah?
Yeah.
oh, always have. I still have, believe it or not, I'll have to dig it out somewhere it's hidden. I have, and this is by the way, if anyone can remember when football was like this, I'm sure you guys will remember what it is. You used to get DVDs of really good games.
Yeah.
I have somewhere in this house the DVD of when we beat Tottenham 4-3 in an FA Cup third round replay when we were down 3-0 at half time and down to 10 men and still won. I have that on DVD. Um, so I have fond memories of just disliking Tottenham and winning Tottenham. Not as recently. None of those memories seem to be as recent. There are my memories of those are quite old. But the more important thing now is right, we've gone past there. The question I want to kind of throw to you guys today is the main topic. Is we spoke on a couple of occasions about head coaches who were on the hot seat, and as it stands, there are three coaches that have been fired this season. So there are three head coaching vacancies going into January, and they are at the Chicago Bears, the New York Jets, and the New Orleans Saints. As per numerous betting sites, I've gone gathered information from about 5 or 6 different betting sites, including Bet365, Paddy Power, and BetMGM, a couple in the States. The three favorite places to have a also a vacant coaching spot in January will be the Jacksonville Jaguars, the New York Giants, and the Dallas Cowboys. All three favorites. And then after looking at numerous different outlets and looking at various different rumors, the three other favorites or most spoken about potential vacancies are the Las Vegas Raiders, Cincinnati Bengals, and Cleveland Browns. Let's start mostly. Let's go to the potentials. Right, that's where the first discussion I think can go in. The Jags, Giants, and Cowboys. On a scale of 0 to 100, how many? What 100%? How likely would you think that those three to be, all three to be vacant?
Two out of three.
Yeah, I think Jacksonville's 100%. One, I just think he's gone. If he lasts longer than if he starts the next season as their head coach, you may as well just hand Trevor Lawrence a sick bag and just let him sit on the side for the rest of the season. Like, there's no point in being there. You're just going to get absolutely clobbered every single game because I just don't. I mean, I personally, since watching him at the Jaguars, I just don't rate Doug Peterson. I know he's done
Yeah.
things in the past, but he's just not been good for them. I think they need to cut their losses with him and move on to someone who is a bit more attack minded and can, do things that they need to change. Giants, I mean, they've not been great for a couple of seasons now. It seems a lot of sense that he'll leave. I The problem I have with Dallas is Mike McCarthy has an out in that he's not had Dak for a few games now, and also Jerry Jones is an idiot, and I think he'll just allow him to stay. I think McCarthy has another game there, another season there. He's the only one I think will stay. If out of the three, he's the one I think will stay.
Yeah.
The only one that made any common logic at all of who would stay, it would end up being Mike McCarthy, because the only option I could have seen was possibly Bill Belichick being the head coach there, because I think that was what was circulating and rumoring around. But the fact now that that's not the case anymore, it does look like that Mike McCarthy is going to somehow miss the sword on this one and coach another year. But I'm sorry, but his coaching is just in the past. It's not with the modern day play scheming anymore. It just isn't. Yes, you got Dak Prescott, who is decent when he wants to be. You got a stud of a receiver in CD Lamb. But the rest of and Micah Parsons, the pass rusher, who by the way, they still need to pay the off season. And I don't know what cap space they've got, but it's not looking great compared to what, say, other teams have got. The rest of the team is fallen to pieces. The offensive line is awful. They can't stop the run. They've got a lot of problems. And do they really think Mike McCarthy's going to be the guy to do that? I have my doubts. With Jacksonville, I think we kind of knew that the writing was on the wall with Doug Peterson a long time ago. Those odd wins against tomato cans only delay the inevitable.
Go,
On
Going
that.
into the 2025 season, the Cowboys have a cap space of 22 million,
Right, so they're not going to be able to pay bloody Michael Parsons then.
unless they get rid of some people.
They're going to need to trade a few people, cut a few people,
Yeah.
and I can see this Cowboys team literally hitting rock bottom. This should have been the season. I don't think it's the season where they should have hit rock bottom, but they were they're sort of close to it. But Jerry Jones doesn't believe in tanking and that sort of. He still wants to go. They still want to compete, which is fine because that is, winning mentality. But also you've also got to look at your team and go, yeah, we're not very good. We're gonna have to do some open heart. We're gonna have to do some open heart surgery here. And I just don't think he's liable to do that. As for the Giants, I personally feel like I feel sorry for Brian Dable. Because what he did for as the OC at Buffalo for Josh Allen was absolutely unbelievable stuff he did for them. Literally took a kid from Wyoming who was so unpredictable and yet so inconsistent with his passing. It's turned him one of the best gunslingers in the game. Goes to the Giants and people thought he could do that with Daniel Jones. No, 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 no. No.
I
I,
think
d-
as well with
I,
with with the Jones situation is he's not had how many games has he missed in the last 2 seasons? Like, as he's not that you could make an argument for Dable in the sense that he's not had a sustainable quarterback to work with because he's like obviously Jones has been out injured all this time, and then he's had to deal with the likes of Tommy DeVito. Obviously, Drew Lock now is the starter. I just think it's one of those where you're now in a position where you need a new quarterback. They're gonna be looking to draft a new quarterback. They've only just got Malik Neighbors, so he's going to be a 1 year, um, a 1 year in wide receiver, elite wide receiver. You've got Tracy and who's stepped up this year in the running back. There are pieces on this team where if you bring in the right head coach and you make the right decisions in the draft and in free agency, that you could make a decent enough team. I don't think the defense is bad. They've got some aging pieces on there, but I don't think it's bad. So again, maybe bring in a couple of pieces there. There may be sort of 3 seasons off being well at the earliest of being even anywhere near, but they're not too far off from being able to do something, or at least be remotely challenging in their own division, or competitive. I think is probably the best way to be competitive rather than challenging. So I think that it's just one of those where they need a fresh set of minds and not a rebuild, but like was the term that Les Snead used. It wasn't a rebuild; it was like a revamp. I think was the term he used.
I'll say I've heard them and I've heard the words retooling.
Yeah, it's like that. Sometimes you just need someone to come in with some fresh ideas who can use the pieces that you've sort of started to build already and add some new top pieces.
I'd throw that in there for the 49ers as well. I'd say
Yeah.
the 49ers could probably benefit from something similar. And it's no disrespect to Kyle Shanahan, but I think maybe you get to a point where you go, look, you're a very good coach, but I think we've just stalled.
Mm.
And just as this is working, I just don't think either one is going to be able to get it over that little hump. And maybe you have. So I would say even say like someone like Kyle Shanahan, I'd look there.
Mm.
But for myself, I think with the Dallas Cowboys, I think you're not going to get any better than Mike McCarthy. And I know you can get better coaches than Mike McCarthy, but I don't think the Cowboys are going to get better than Mike McCarthy. As far as I would absolutely agree there as with the Giants and Brian Daboll and the fact that I think they've got a the defense isn't terrible. The defense could get some pieces, but and would benefit from having some pieces. But the problem is, like you say, with some of those aging ones, I'm not saying they need premium defensive talent, but they're going to be picking high in the first round, and that is probably at this point going to have to be a quarterback.
It'll probably end up being Cam Ward.
It's
Yeah,
probably going to have to be a
likely to
quarterback.
be.
So
Yeah, it'll have to be a quarterback. I mean, it's either that or they go and pick up someone off the free, like someone like a Sam Darnold or something like
yeah,
that. One who's maybe a threat, who's maybe there. Me
Would
personally,
Sam Darnold really want to return to New York after his stint with
well,
the Jets? Would he really want to go back there?
probably not. But I think me personally. I think no matter what happens, I think that they should be looking at bringing in a veteran quarterback, no matter what,
yeah,
whether they draft a quarterback or not, because we've seen, you know, I think Drake May this year has benefited from not being the starter straight away. I think you could make an argument that Caleb Williams would have benefited from it maybe a little bit, although he has shown moments of brilliance, and obviously I'd say the exception being Jaden Daniels. But I think that I'm Bo Nix, sorry. But I do think generally that quarterbacks don't do well as rookies in their first season. I think now you look at someone like Bryce Young, who started off as a starter and then has been taken out and then put back in, and he's starting to now perform as he's built some experience. I think you need to be able to have someone who is more experienced in that position. And I think that that's something that whoever is going to be the coach next year needs to look at. Stop fanning about with all of this Tommy DeVito and Drew Lock. They're just not starting quarterbacks. You shouldn't be having them. They should be second and third stringers at the very best. They shouldn't be the sort of ones that you're looking at. And I think if you're going to bring in a new quarterback, you've got to have solid um, veteran there as well. And someone like a Sam Darnold, I think, would work. He's shown
If
he can
if
stand on his
I
own feet.
if I said to you that in 2025 the Giants would have of players who would currently be under contract in 2025, the Giants would have $60 million in free cap space, which is among the highest in the NFL at this moment in time, and would have the 27th oldest squad. Um, which actually works out at, let me flip that round because I'm not doing that maths. Sixth youngest squad roster in the NFL with 60 million in cap space, and that's based off a roster of 37 players, active players. That's a good position to be in. A young roster and lots of cap space to go out and get. Would Sam Darnold want to go to New York? Maybe, maybe not. But I promise you now, he's not going to be in Minnesota next year unless he's willing to get bumped down. Other teams may want him in as a starting quarterback. Well, at the end of it, Minnesota are going to start JJ McCarthy. End of story. That was always that was
Yeah.
the plan was to start him this year, and I think in the end, and that obviously that hasn't worked out. But they're not going to stray from that for a second year, no matter how decent Darnold's been this year. So he's got to go somewhere, and
The
there's only going
the
to be a
other
handful of teams
option,
in the market for one.
the other option is, and again, I don't know whether due to the way that this season's gone and whether this would be something that would be viable depending on how it goes with with the rookie that they have, would potentially be trading for Kirk Cousins be an option. Again, I know he's not done great at the Falcons, but if the Falcons are looking to potentially move him on, if they're happy to then look at starting Michael Penix, would there be a possibility where a way to get his wages off the Falcons, bring in a veteran quarterback who knows how to work in the NFL, and then bringing in someone like a Cam Ward through the draft and having him sit for a year?
I don't hate that idea. I really don't hate that
I
idea.
think for me, I think it works for the Falcons and the Giants.
Yes.
The Giants have a lot of cap space. They have a lot to work with. They have a young squad already. Basically, just hammer the draft as best you can, but go and get a veteran quarterback because I think you can't, in the position that they're in, bringing in someone like a Kirk Cousins to work with Malik Neighbors, build up his experience. They've already got, I think Wandale Robinson isn't a terrible wide receiver. They've got a
Yeah.
good young group of running backs. The O line isn't great, but again, you could work with that. Maybe pick up a few free agencies. There's going to be a few out there, and just
Yeah.
you're not going to be up there for a year. So just bring in someone who can essentially be that guide for someone like a Cam Ward or a Shador Sanders or whoever you're going to bring in.
Yeah. I was gonna say I don't see it. I don't see Shadar maybe going to the Giants, but Shadar's going to be probably in that conversation as well.
Yeah.
I don't see Dion wanting him to go to the New York market.
No,
It's going to be too thingy
but
for it,
he's
but that's not the
he's
point.
he's got Raiders written all over him, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, Vegas.
Oh yeah, Vegas. It's not so much as that, but
Because if you don't succeed, nobody cares.
there was a wow. There was a number of teams that Deion
Nobody.
Sanders said he wants his boys to, or rather Shador Sanders to actually go. One of them was the Raiders. The other two
Yeah.
were the
Yeah,
Cowboys and the Eagles, and there was two other names. I can't remember who
yeah,
they were now. So I think it does smell like he's going to be a Raider.
yeah.
Mm.
And if that is the case, if the Giants get number one overall pick, they're going to take Shador Sanders by hook or by crook. But if
But
they end up with the second overall pick and Sanders goes to Las Vegas, then I think you got to look at that, and then I think the Giants have got to be very headstrong and very smart about this because they go, like, okay, is Cam Ward ready to be in this NFL? Probably not. We might need a veteran to actually help along the way, and I'm not going to even argue with Sam about a trade for Kirk Cousins. I really, really not. I think the one person I would argue with you is probably Chapman, but that's a discussion
Well,
for another day.
to be fair, Chapman will probably message us and tell us how wrong or right we are. And be
Yeah.
pretty sure Chapman would potentially call family members and say, "Do you want to drop him off at the airport? We'll contribute towards petrol. Um,
Yeah.
we'll contribute towards the gas money for you to drive him to the airport." Type
But again,
thing.
looking at obviously talking about obviously the Kirk Cousins deal, another one that they could potentially look at, and I think he hasn't done bad, would be someone like, and I don't think this one seems a little bit less, and I don't think it would be a good option personally. But again, if Shador Sanders does end up going to Vegas, maybe someone like a Gardner Minshew to the Giants. I don't like it. I'm not a massive fan of that idea, but again, it's a veteran who could do
Yeah,
something. You know what I mean? It's just someone you
yeah.
want someone who's a veteran who isn't too past it, but is able to stand on their own 2 feet. And I think there's not many of them. I think at the moment this year, like going into next year, I don't think there's too many. So
No, yeah. And actually, and we've said before that the QB class coming in this year, with all due respect to your Shadar Sanders, as I've mentioned now in the last few weeks, I'm not quite I'm not Lion Kinging him and holding him up to the universe and going, no, Shadar Sanders is the quarterback from this draft. But I'm not against Shadar Sanders. I'm a fan of what he can do and what his potential. Cam Ward, yeah, he's been bailed out of too many games this season by referees. It is what it is. But
the QB
this
class
QB
is
class
not.
is not the strongest. It's just not. It's not the strongest, and you are more likely to find a quarterback who would genuinely just benefit from being behind there for a year
To
and
show
sitting
you
back.
how
And
to
you
sh
just got someone who's got, like you say, you just got someone who's got to get you through that.
sorry, Fletch, but there was a report. I say he is a porter for the Patriots. Well, I don't say he's a porter. For NBC called Tom Curran, and he basically stated that last year when we took before we was going off, we was at pick number three. He basically said we should be trading down, accumulating more picks, this, that, instead of going for a quarterback, i.e., like a Drake May or a Jaden Daniels. Fast forward to now, or rather to his latest show, he's now backtracked and doubled and now stomached it by saying that we're very glad. So I'm glad now we took Drake May at three and not going into this class of quarterbacks going into 2025 because he said because his words were it's very underwhelming.
Yeah.
So the fact that we've got Drake May was an absolute bonus, and I think the Giants that's why they wanted to climb up to three to take our position because I think they wanted Drake May. So I
I
think
think
they kind of knew, and I think they fell apart. And when we took him, I think the Giants didn't have an outlet after that.
yeah, I think the thing with this year's QB draft is I think it's all through the telling of how this QB draft is by the fact that no one, the Heisman Trophy winners, is not completely riddled with QBs.
No, and it's the two QBs in the final four are makeups. They make up the numbers to get
Yeah,
it to four. It's between Gene T and Travis Hunter. End of story.
yeah,
Cam Ward and Dylan Gabriel, they're making up numbers.
yeah. I think it's normally we tend to see with the Heisman that you tend to have two or three who are the front runners who are QBs, not two or three, not two
Yeah.
who are just in there. So yeah,
Yeah, you have
it
two or
is a
three
week.
QBs and then someone who you go, come on, man, it can't be a QB award every year.
Mm. But the thing is, as well, it's a shame because obviously I know that for me this year, Ewers is going to be in the draft, and I really like Ewers, but he he still has a lot of work to do for the NFL, a lot of work, and the same with Carson Beck. but in terms of head coaches,
Yeah, we'll
those
say, yeah,
those two being the two that I think that I would say are probably the dead certs to not be in jobs next year. And like I say,
yeah,
Mike McCarthy will probably still be in a job next year, but I think he'll be on his last life in terms of doing something with this Cowboys team.
yeah. And I want to say thank you, Sam, by the way, for bringing it back to the actual conversation. You're a very good host. Bringing it to the three main rumored teams in the Raiders, Bengals, Browns. A year ago, Kevin Stefanski won Coach of the Year, and now there are some fans. I'm aware that our Browns fan is not one of these people, and I won't say that within we have a reasonable Browns fan as part of the AAW network, not an unreasonable one. But there is a faction of fans now claiming that Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski are the problem. And Deshaun Watson, they are like Deshaun Watson is also the problem, but they are the cause of the problem of Deshaun Watson. And then you've got the Bengals and the Raiders. Now I think the Bengals one is a bit unfair, and as well with the Raiders, he's had 1 year, if that.
I don't like any of those three to be sacked this year. I when what is it? Is this Pierce's name? The guy,
Antonio Pierce,
Antonio
yeah.
Pierce.
Antonio Pierce. Yeah, like you say, he's had 1 year and he came in, and that team is ass. You can't expect someone who's a brand new. I mean, yes, it's his first head coaching job, but you cannot expect him to work miracles with that team. He lost Josh Jacobs. He lost Devontae Adams. He's now having to deal with. He's had. Is it Hunter Renfro's been out and gone?
Yeah.
Like he's just everything. He's not had. His running backs have been uh, Mattison and Zahir White, who's been
Zamir White,
terrible.
and now they left, and now they got Abdullah and the
McCormick,
Amir Abdullah.
McCormick, isn't it?
yeah, Amir Abdullah, and then McCormick, Sean McCormick, I think his name is.
Yeah.
And,
Um, and
and
like it just is. There's no. I mean, Max Crosby has had to play out of his skin every single game and looks absolutely buggered
Yeah,
every game.
he
and
does. He,
Like,
he looks tired.
with all of that as well, bringing up Max Crosby, you've had to deal, however legitimate the thing was when Hutch went down, and then a couple of other teams as we were getting closer and closer to the end of the trade deadline. So much noise around Max Crosby, and nothing Max Crosby could do or say would have changed that noise. Nothing Antonio Pierce could do or say changed that noise. Nothing the owners of the Raiders could do or say to change that noise. And I don't care what people say. You have to manage a roster full of people. And at the end of the day, in that locker room on a Tuesday morning, when you're all getting ready for team meetings, half of your D line coach is going like, "Will I have Max Crosby tomorrow?" Because everything you say is either true or it's also smoke and mirrors and something's happening. So you've got to deal with a roster full of people and 80 people in a building who don't know if their best player is going to be there tomorrow or whether they'll be in Detroit or Atlanta or whatever. To manage that as well.
on top of having to play your third quarterback of the year.
Exactly. And you've got to go into every media session and knowing that the number one question is going to be, you're so bad, everyone thinks your best player should be out and away from you as far as possible. It's not an easy situation to deal with, is essentially what I'm getting at with, not just in terms of the actual players leaving, but also in terms of the fact that you've got to deal with a media frenzy telling you just how bad you are and that some people are simply too good to be in your building.
Can we also talk about the fact that Antonio Pierce has also got one of the best tight ends, up and coming tight ends, and
Absolutely.
has
Oh
used
yeah.
him
They
so well.
yeah.
Yeah.
They've recognized how good he is. They've obviously picked gone up the draft to get him, which I'm annoyed at because apparently we wanted him, and have basically just turned him into the next Travis Kelce. The way he is playing it is that sort of level, that high, like tight
Yeah.
end one sort of level. So I
But he
think
does
there are
block. But he also blocks as well.
well,
Uh,
yeah. So I suppose he's more like a George Kittle then, I suppose.
yeah, that's probably a better comparison to have.
This
Yeah.
is like,
This year's Sam Laporta, but a
don't want
lot
to say,
more highly rated.
I was going to say it, but then thought, no, I'll let someone else say it because
He's,
otherwise
he's
I'm a
he
homer.
is he is this year's Sam Laporta, but
Yeah.
Sam Laporta did not have as much initial hype as
No,
Brock Bowers did.
no.
No. Anybody with a pair of eyeballs that watched Georgia 2 years ago and saw Brock Bowers where he goes, yeah, this kid is going to be absolutely legit in the NFL.
Yeah,
And but yeah, I do think to a certain extent you've got all of those things, and you're absolutely right. And I think the thing that does worry me though is I do believe that there is some smoke with this fire. That Antonio Pierce could genuinely be somewhat on his bum could be getting a little bit warm because I'm with you. I don't think he deserves that, and I think I want him to continue. It does worry me a little bit that someone's going to be too reactive. You hold the wrong, but
Well,
also the other thing I want to throw in there, they're in the AFC West for crying out loud. You've got arguably, well, one of the two greatest teams of all time in your division in the current Kansas City Chiefs with Andy Reid and doing all the things that they're doing. The Denver Broncos have turned everyone into a believer this year. The Bo Nix has been fantastic, and the Denver Broncos have been better than anybody thought they actually would be. And the LA
Amen.
Chargers have been solid. The you are in a division which I do think the NFC North this year, the AFC North last year. There's always a division that's just every team seems to. For a couple of years, this could be that division, and the Raiders have to keep up with that
which
because
is
they're the
why
ones
I,
falling behind.
which is why I don't think they gave the three names. I think this is one of them that was Antonio Pierce is probably one of the names I could see being let go of at the end of the season. Because remember, although Mark Davis owns the Raiders, who's also got part ownership?
Brady.
Patrick Mahomes.
Tom
Oh,
Tom
sorry.
No,
Sorry. There you go. That's Tom.
No, that's the Kansas City Royals. That's the Major
That's
League Baseball.
no. That was on behalf of Tom for that one.
Yes, it's Tom Brady. He has a minor majority stake in the ownership of the Raiders. So you don't think he's gonna have a
Yeah.
say in this? Goes, there's a hot commodity out there in Ben Johnson. You get him and picture him with Shador Sanders, and then we'll see what this team can
Well,
potentially do.
I do think this is the other option that I think that they could, and this is why I suppose why there is the rumor is you're now in a position where your team is terrible. It is going to be picking up in the top three picks. Do you reset? So not what we've mentioned before with the others, where it's been a a revamp or a retooling or whatever you want to call it. This for me could be one of those where it's a reset and a rebuild in the sense of just not even a rebuild, a build.
Nuke it, just
Yeah,
nuke it, nuke the
start
franchise and start
afresh.
all over again.
Because the thing is that Antonio Pierce came in at the time where they needed him, and he did what he needed to do. And you could make an argument that they'll do it that way. Me personally, I'd like him to stay. I do quite like him as a head coach, and he's a lot better than the other one of the other head coaches, which is one of the interim head coaches that's in play, who I do not like.
I do. I think he was a linebackers coach before he got promoted up to head coach. And defensively, I thought the Raiders were doing. They weren't great, but I thought they were holding their own. I thought they were
Mm.
holding their own on the defensive side of the ball, but they've just sort of lost their way a little bit. And that's kind of what happens when you have a DC moves up the head coach who has to do the whole thing now. It does kind of let you down a little bit in a
Yeah.
way.
They are
well,
drifting, aren't they? I think it's probably
But I feel like, as you just said with the AFC West, you got with the Chargers, the Chiefs, and the Broncos the Raiders are being left in the dust. And so if they stick with this guy, they got to hope that Antonio Pierce can get them back, at least back to competitively with like the Chargers and the Broncos and so on. But if they don't believe that, then they have got to go with the hot commodity. They've got to try and do something because otherwise, if you keep getting left behind, as at some point it could take years before
Yeah.
you get back to any sort of relevancy.
Well,
Look
you
at the text.
started, yeah. Well, you started that conversation now and started to you brought up potential head coaching
Hmm.
candidates. And this is where I wanted to kind of get and kind of lead the conversation to and have a bit around this. So I've got 5 names that are currently in the NFL. These are the top 5 names that are being spoken about for head coaching jobs that will come up this year. Those are Aaron Glenn, defensive coordinator of the Detroit Lions; Ben Johnson, offensive coordinator of the Detroit Lions; Mike Vrabel, who's a special assistant, is it offensive assistant at the Browns?
He's unemployed.
No,
No, he's a consultant.
he's a
He's a
consultant.
consultant
Consultant.
He's
at
at
the
the Browns. I
Browns.
know that. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
He's the offensive consultant or some
Yeah, yeah. I knew
made
it
up.
was like offensive consultant or offensive like assistant or something at the Browns.
Yeah,
Brian Flores, defensive coordinator at the Minnesota Vikings, and Todd Monken, who's the offensive coordinator at the Ravens. Now, I'm hoping that you guys will also put forward a couple other names. There was one other name that was extremely hot up until yesterday, and that was that guy who he used to be a coach of the Patriots. What's his name?
Yeah,
oh,
Um,
he's
well,
quite famous, isn't he? He's quite famous.
we're
William
on to Cincinnati. Yeah,
William, some Eastern European guy, um, who had a decent career prior, but took a year off. Bill Belichick is now at UNC. That's an interesting conversation to be had, but could take us a billion years out of the way of this conversation. So I don't think that's the conversation for today. Do
Listen
you
to our
guys
college football podcast, and
exactly,
we have done a little bit of discussion on
exactly?
Bill Belichick on there.
And this will be a discussion that comes about multiple times, probably over the off season when we get bored of things to talk about. We'll just talk about Belichick and North Carolina. But I think it's going to be really, really interesting. To, like, have you guys got any other head coaches or people that you're looking at outside of that list as potential head coaching candidates? And if so, like, let's start to put a little couple of bits together. Who goes where and why? And the one rule is Ben Johnson can't leave the Lions. That's your only rule.
He will be leaving the Lions.
He will not be leaving the
He
Lions.
will. He
I
will.
I choose to live in denial.
For me, he is the number one candidate out there this year. For me, he's the number one guy,
yeah.
and I personally think
The Bears, in it.
the Bears is the most sensible option because it's not easy whether you're a up and coming OC, whether you're any sort of coach that isn't a head coach. Going into being a head coach is not an easy role to step into because it's a lot easier being the OC where you can sit behind a head coach and just do your thing and work your offense and things like that. To be the guy that then becomes the guy and have to have everyone looking at you, you're the one, whether you've got other coaches around to make the decisions, you need a ready offense to go into. And I think that Bears offense is primed, ready to go. It needs a
Yeah.
couple of pieces on the O line. Other than that, I think that offense is ready to go. And if you can send someone in like a Ben Johnson who can basically just work with the OC there, can work with Caleb and the wide receivers, and just you know, there's something there. And I think that as much as I know you'll hate the fact that it'll be Ben Johnson potentially going to a divisional rival, it just makes sense. The whole thing makes sense. But as we've already mentioned, if the Raiders do decide to go, money could talk. And if they can offer him a lot of money, he could be a Raider. Now, I'd hate that. I think Ben Johnson would. I don't think would do well there personally, but I think he could do really well at the Bears.
So Again, I'm gonna, for the purposes of this conversation, I'll stop living in complete denial. But I want you to know that as soon as this conversation is over, as soon as this call is ended, I go back to living in pure denial. Um, but I will say there are a couple of things here with Ben Johnson, and it came out a few days ago that Ben Johnson has two specific head coaching job demands. Number one is that he wants organizational alignment with an emphasis on making sure that the head coach and GM are on the same page. They have to be. And that's something that I think, again, if you want to come from the system he's currently in, Aaron Glenn and Dan Campbell are like that. If Aaron Glenn, I get the feeling that if one of them sneezes, the other one's already got a tissue waiting. That's how well they
Like
know each
Sneed and
other and what
McVeigh, like
exactly,
Sneed and McVeigh, yeah.
exactly. You are on such the same page that it there becomes a point where you know what the other one's going to do before they do it and all that sort of stuff. The other is recognition from the organization on what went wrong previously and their willingness to fix it. So that takes the Jets out. And
That takes the Cowboys ever out then.
that takes
That
the
takes the
Cowboys out.
Jets out. That takes the Cowboys out. That takes a lot of dysfunctional teams out of the conversation
I
there.
think I think for some weird reason it puts the Jags in, but for the only reason of like I'm very much thinking that Shad Khan is someone who's very willing to say I was wrong, I'm sorry, but also just doesn't know what to do to actually fix
Oh
it
yeah, he,
in
he
a
he
different.
knows that he's done wrong, but he doesn't know how to sort it out. He
It's
just
a bit
thinks,
like it's a bit
"We'll
like
go
his
somewhere else."
it's a bit like his son who runs AEW. He goes, yeah, there's a lot wrong going on with it, but he doesn't know what.
AAW
It's
or AEW?
AEW. Sorry, beg
Oh,
your pardon. Yeah.
And not to
fair
go on
enough.
a
First
side
I
note,
heard
but
about this.
have you seen the thing about AEW that's come out with Tony Khan is that one of the wrestlers has basically had a big issue, and he's come out and said, yeah, there was some language issues. We thought he was hungry, so we got him some food. He was actually injured, and we should have got him medical attention. You just think, oh Jesus! Like even admitting that is just terrible.
It's a dog and pony show, same as the Jacksonville
Yeah,
Jaguars. A dog and pony show.
I broke my leg. Well, we got you a hot dog.
yeah.
Well, we
Language
got you a
barrier is
hot dog.
apparently the issue.
Do you want the hot dog? No.
No. As got
But no,
mustard
it's
on it.
like
No.
with Ben Johnson, the other thing I'll say is the Lions pay him handsomely. He is paid roughly very similar to what I believe Dan Campbell is getting paid, getting very similar to a lot of head coaches in the league. And he's very much seems to be someone who he won't jump at the job for the jump for the title head coach. He will the opportunity has to
He'll
be
wait.
right for him. And I do think this is why I'm like, this is what kind of gives me hope in the fact that I know he's not just going to jump, so the option to leave might not be there. But the Bears offer such a great opportunity to have a Caleb Williams, to have all those pieces, and to come from an organization where he can now turn around and say, right, let me focus on the O line. One, I'll get onto this, and actually, I'll get onto this if we manage to get around to it. But then I'm also, looking at some of the other jobs as well, though, like there's only going to be one or two every year or so that comes out that you could say with that one, with those ideas. Um,
Yeah.
I believe last year, this was I was going to say was I believe last year, um, it was no, I've lost it. I've lost it. Um, I've lost what I was going to say. What about some of the other candidates? I'm going to throw this one out there just because it gets both of the Lions guys out, and then we can focus on the others. Aaron Glenn to the Saints.
It would make sense.
Yeah.
The only thing that I would say about that is they had Dennis Allen before, who I believe was a defensive
Defensive
coach.
mind. Yep.
Now, they may not want to go down that road again
I don't think the
because it
Saints
did
need.
not work.
I agree with Sam. I don't think the Saints need a defensive minded coach for this team. I generally don't. I think defensively the Saints have always been near enough average. most of the time.
I think the
I,
Saints defense at times has been elite. It's been top
yeah.
10 minimum. I think last year I think it was the ninth best defense overall.
So I'll throw a name out there and see if you agree with me or not. And I think it's about time he did get a chance because he did really well. He's done really well for his previous team. He's doing well for the current team. He's the OC for right now. Kellen Moore,
Yeah,
OC at the Cowboys, got him as the second highest scoring offense in the NFL. And the Eagles, well, look what he's doing with the likes of a rejuvenated Saquon Barkley and Jalen
mm,
Hurts with AJ Brown um and Smith and Dallas Goddard and so on. Look what he's doing with that. Um, that's a potential. I think he should deserve a chance there. If the Saints got someone like Kellen Moore, but the problem is though, it's how much longer, how much more tread on the tires has Derek Carr got? Pardon the pun.
very little. I think that the Saints are one season away from having to do a total rebuild.
Correct.
They have been banging on the door of that cap giant cap problem for the last 6 years, and they need to sort it out because at the moment, going into 2025, they have a 65 million below the cap line that they have to
Oof.
sort out. But the thing is, they do this every year. They have a 70. They have, I think last year it was 73 million below the cap line. The year before that, it was 65 million. So the the GM there knows what he's doing, but I think that there is a lot that needs to be done to refix. They need to stop this circus of going around and
Yeah.
trying to just fix the cap. They need to just have that reset and sort it out because they've got decent players. They've got the likes of Olave and Kamara, and that's some of the players on that defense are solid. They just need to fix it.
Yeah. And but this is the thing when you talk about things like the cap space and the just the mess they're in general as an organization, you've got to have a head coach has got to have the willingness and resolve to work through that. And I think if you look at someone like, say, Aaron Glenn, who was there before, has a love and a passion for the franchise, he may be a bit more willing to put up with some crap.
Yeah,
Um, this was what I wanted to say about Ben Johnson, by the way. The thing I totally forgot. Someone put forward before that because of Ben Johnson's young age, he is.
36.
I say young. He's 38 this year.
That's close.
Um, so not overly young, but still a little pretty young, in the NFL. It's last year because when you go as a head coach to a team, you've got to bring your own staff with you. If he doesn't have that relationship, and with all due respect to him, if he was to be talking to some Lions staff, say, and just saying like to whatever coach that works under him as offensive coordinator and saying, would you come over with me as my OC, or would you come over with me and you can be the passing game coordinator or the run game coordinator or whatever? If they were a bit like, well, no, I kind of want to stay here. How good does that look when going and building your own staff? If you don't know who you would take with you necessarily as your own staff. So quite potentially he could have been using this year to also get those relationships. That was the only other thing I wanted to add, and I'm sorry, I had to throw it in there because it bugged me that I couldn't remember it a minute ago. Looking at a couple of where do you see someone like Vrabel has to have another job? Vrabel has to be a head coach somewhere because it seemed ridiculous that he got fired in the first place and then never got hired. Vrabel has to have a job somewhere.
He should do. And I think the rumor of it going around is that he could be a potential target for the Bears. And I know obviously Ben Johnson is obviously the obvious one to take, but I wouldn't rule out Mike Vrabel, an experienced coach who has been there, done it before. Remember though, he took the Titans to the AFC Championship with Ryan Tannehill. you think you could do better with Caleb Williams? I think he can. And let's be real, Chicago has always been known. They've been known as the monsters of the Midway. Why? Because of their defense. He's a defensive-minded coach who could get that defense to being from just being good to then
Well,
being elite again.
well, you can call them that. I just call them the monsters of mid. But because I'm
They're
down with the
not.
kids in it.
They're not even mid. Anyway. Um. So yeah, and I think Vrabel's has got an opportunity to go there. Let's just see. Sorry, let's just jump back on the list here and find out what we've got.
Brian, there's Brian Flores. I wanted to make a because obviously
Go for it.
there was the big issue with him not recently, maybe a couple of years ago, where he basically was it called out. He called out a franchise for basically only choosing him because of the fact that he was
Dolphins.
black.
It
Yeah,
was
Miami.
the Dolphins, yeah.
and that obviously caused a big stir. Now, I do think there's an argument to say that that could hinder his ability to go and get a head coaching job because of the fact you're very like people don't always like whether it's right or wrong. People don't always like someone that outspoken about those sorts of things. So that could hinder him in terms of looking for a job. And I do think it is potentially going to cause an issue. But again, going down the idea of potentially being someone who the Bears could look at, he's a defensive minded coach, from what I
Yeah.
remember, isn't he? He's a
Yeah,
defensive
he's
minded
my
coach.
yeah.
So again, he could be if we're looking at, the Bears wanting to sustain their defense because their defense is strong in the most part. They've always been a much more defensive minded franchise than they have offensive. They could potentially be looking at that, but again, that would go against the whole idea of where we're talking obviously Ben Johnson being well, knowing your wrongs from previous years and knowing how
Yeah.
to fix it. Stop going for defensive coaches might be one of them.
Mm.
So yeah, I mean, it might be something that you're potentially looking at there. Again, Vrabel could be a good option at the Saints because he knows how to work with a veteran quarterback in their final years. He's experienced, and I think that he would work. He would work well there. I think it would work. But to be honest, I think with the Saints, I think anything. I don't like Rizzy, so I don't see him being the coach there next year.
Yeah. That was it. So just I was just double checking on the Flores thing. He'd sued the NFL plus the Giants, Broncos, and Dolphins. And then a little while later, Steve Wilkes joined in on it. And he sued them over essentially what was essentially sham interviews with the whole because of the Rooney rule. Teams had already decided on who they were going to pick, but had to
Yeah, it
interview
was
someone who was
positive
black because
discrimination essentially.
that he was being interviewed for jobs he was never in for. Um, and then because there was that thing as well about how he claimed that the Dolphins owner was asking him to tank, but offering him financial incentives to tank, and
Yeah,
then I'd asked him to tamper with a player or something. So yeah, the, the lawsuit. There was a lot in the lawsuit, a
yeah,
lot of different things.
and I genuinely do think that that could hinder him getting a head coaching job, and it shouldn't do because at the end of the day, what he was saying was right. Like he was essentially only being chosen for jobs because of the Rooney Rule on the basis of his skin color, not based upon the fact that whether or rightly or wrongly he was ready for the job. And I think that I don't want to go into a whole section on you know racial discrimination within the NFL, but I do think that it could hinder him in the
Yeah,
sense of that he's with him being outspoken, especially against certain teams. I mean, that pretty much I think rules him out of the New York Giants job
yeah.
ever. But I just think it could be that he may be one that although his name's up there at the moment, he may not be one I think that will get a job personally.
I yeah. You You want to see it because at the end of the day, the man has merited
Hmm.
because of what he has done with the Vikings and what he has done from a coaching standpoint. He has merited a shot at a head coaching job in the NFL. And sadly, that is likely to be the case. And it just so happens that one of the jobs he would probably be going for, the one of the jobs that's open, he would more than likely because that team was named in one of his lawsuits. Um,
There's
but
two. There's two
That
more
could
names.
win. I was going to say that could win him the job at the Jets, though.
There's two names
well,
on. There's two more names I will
or the
throw out
Cowboys.
there. There's two names I will also throw out there as well. Okay, Joe Brady, the offensive coordinator for the Buffalo Bills.
Yep.
He was interviewed for a head coach job in the past, and the performances of Josh Allen and the Bills after an off season. They traded away star wideout Stephon Diggs. That's only going to bolster his status. So I wouldn't all be surprised to see Joe Brady's name surface as a candidate again. And the other one I'm going to throw out there, Jesse Minter, the Chargers defensive coordinator. Now, hear me out. He worked for John Harbaugh in Baltimore from 2017 to 2020, succeeding Mike McDonald as the DC under Jim Harbaugh at Michigan when McDonald became Ravens DC in 22. And after winning a national title at Michigan, which me and Fletch celebrated, by the way, Minter followed Harbaugh to the LA to Los Angeles and is coordinated one of the top defenders in the league in his first season. What are they giving up? Something along the region of like 13, 14 points on average per game, pretty,
Ridiculous.
which is pretty outstanding. Um, McDonald now in Seattle is the league's youngest head coach, and his success only strengthens Minter's Harbaugh backed case. So I would throw Jesse Minter in there. But again, it's someone who's going to take on a DC.
Yeah.
Who's going to take on a DC to be head coach? Because the NFL is an offensive. It is all moved to the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah.
It makes sense to move on to have an offensive coordinator to be your new head coach. Um, but yeah,
Um,
those are two
As a,
names to throw
as
out there.
a as a question, and this is something maybe that we want to put out to other people or whatever, but
yeah.
there are occasions, and we did see it last year with Jim Harbaugh coming to the NFL. Did Jim or his brother, whichever one it was? I always get them mixed up.
It's Jim.
Yeah, I get them mixed up. um, would there be potential for NFL teams to look at college head coaches?
Yes.
And if so, who?
Lincoln Riley.
I think for me, the one that I would and know that there's going to be one person who's not going to like me for saying this,
Uh-oh.
Kirby Smart.
Kirby Smart. I'm not against
Oh,
the idea. I'm not against the idea,
I don't
but I
see it
feel
happening because I don't see it happening because he is a Georgia guy
I look at
through and
Kirby
through.
Smart as more of an aggressive type of coach. I don't think that sits well with the NFL crop of players we got nowadays. Where I think as Lincoln Riley is more sort of that players coach that can still coach you, but can also understand from your own personal well being. So I'm not against Kirby Smart. I just think Lincoln Riley probably would suit it a little bit better due to his more lesser of a demeanor, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
Georgia, Valdosta State, Florida State, LSU, Georgia, Miami Dolphins, but then Alabama and Georgia. And the man's a college coach.
he's a
I,
college coach.
Hmm.
I, and I don't mean that as in like, oh, well, obviously stating the obvious, he coaches at
Yeah,
Georgia. Like, he's a college coach through and through. And at the end of that, you've got one of the sweetest jobs in all of football,
yeah.
successfully coaching Georgia. I don't see him wanting to leave that just because it's
No,
such a sweet coaching job.
and
Um,
he's an alma mater from there as well, isn't he? So
uh,
it's like his
yeah.
home. So
Um,
I get it was more me thinking,
no, no.
we obviously if anyone listens to the college podcast, we did have Chapman on who is a Bulldogs fan, and he has wonderful things to say about Kirby Smart, and I just think,
Well,
if you are a head coach, if you are looking for a head coach, looking in college football isn't always the worst decision to make. I mean, we've seen plenty of
no.
good head coaches move up, and I think obviously Jim Harbaugh's probably one that we can say now as one that's shown that he can make the step up. I know he's
Yeah.
obviously done what before. But
Yeah. And that is a lot of the times the three main people you're looking at for head coaching jobs are two are NFL coordinators, college head coaches. They're just the best ones that you're gonna go. They're what you are looking for. Now there is a name from college that I wanted to bring forward, and I did just do a little tippy tappy type in our little in recording platform chat just to say I want one name to bring up, and then we'll get on to something else to start wrapping up. There is a man who has a lot of NFL experience who's just been in the NCAA who is now looking for work with the option and the intent of going back to the NFL this year. A name that we all know, a name that potentially should have been a head coach a couple of years ago in the NFL. Eric Bieniemy's left UCLA.
has he?
Yeah, yeah. So he got set. He got fired. Actually, he didn't leave. He got fired.
Was he the guy that was? He was he at the Saints?
No, was it
Bieniemy was Andy Reid's right hand man for
Oh, he was,
years,
yeah. But he
and
no,
then
he was linked with the Saints job
he was, and then
before they went with Dennis Allen.
it was one of the things was, and I even remember because when Dan Campbell got hired, it was when Eric Bieniemy's name was really, really hot for a head coaching job.
yeah.
Dan Campbell gave the speech of the kneecap speech, and a lot of the tweets that I was seeing at the time were like, "This is who Eric Bieniemy's lost the job to. This knucklehead, this meathead." Turns out, great decision to hire that meathead. Nothing against Eric Bieniemy, but it was a great decision to hire the meathead in the end. But even a few years ago, then he went from, I think it was quite evident that he was, a lot of the credit for his offense was being taken by Andy Reid. Because the whole, oh yeah, it's Eric Bieniemy, but Andy Reid's really pulling the strings. Andy Reid's really the one doing everything. It's not really Eric Bieniemy. Eric Bieniemy is just the middleman. Then
He went to the
he went
Commanders.
to the Commanders under, what's his name, Rivera. I believe it was
Yeah,
under
that was a
Rivera.
recipe. That was a recipe for disaster. That was.
Yeah, completely, and I feel really bad because I liked Eric Bieniemy, and I thought he absolutely deserved the head coaching shot, and thought, do you know what? Even if the Commanders go and be okay on offense and don't light it up, at least you could turn around and say that was a Commanders team that was good, and that was all Bieniemy because Riverboat Run was going to do what he was going to do. That was going to be all Eric, and it completely catapulted him back in his face, and sent him back to the NCAA. Not the worst thing in the world. I felt really bad for him, and I would love to see him in the NFL again.
The
It's
problem was though he's been fired not from an NFL team but from an NCAA team, so it gives me cause for concern. If you can get fired from a college team as the OC, what chances of you going back to the NFL again to actually be a head coach there?
hang on. Oh, yeah, dismissed.
Yeah, he was. He was fine.
Yeah,
But then, to be
but
fair, it looks like they fired basically everyone on their offensive coaching staff, bar the QB coach.
yeah, and like I say, I just know his agent had put out a thing recently saying the NFL's the next step. Now, hopefully, I mean, you could always turn, yeah, sorry, so I say, yeah, we'll take on a defensive coordinator, a defensive coordinator as head coach, but we'll bring with us an Eric Bieniemy or something. Um, so that was just a name from college. I know he's long time standing NFL head coach, offensive coordinator, but there's a name from college that could potentially see its way back in. Um, in the interest of just trying to keep this episode to wrap up and let us all get some sleep tonight, um, I think it's time to get on to our wonderful, wonderful sponsors. That would be Fantasy Game Day, the first and only NFL daily fantasy app made by UK fans for UK fans. What you can create your lineup, manage your budget, and compete against fellow UK fans, including but not limited to some of us right here on this podcast. And come against us, come fight, come at us. Try us. Mean it. Just head to, and you could potentially even win a little bit of money in the process, hopefully. Just head to the Fantasy Game Day app. The link is, where is it, Carl? For the people on YouTube, where is it? Yeah, right there, down there. The link is down there if you are on YouTube. If you are on our audio platforms, it is in the description and the show notes of this episode. Just head to the link, download the app, sign up, and use code HRDLE. That is hurdle without the U, even though there is no hurdle without you. I should just let you have that. I just let you. You can jump in with that next time. I'll let. No, let's try it. Let's try it properly. That is code HRDLE hurdle without the U.
But there's no hurdle without you. Without
There we
without
go.
the few friends.
And we didn't plan that. We didn't plan that. That was all natural. If you do, you receive a free play worth £7.50 once you sign up and play for the first time, because the lads over at Fantasy Game Day are just that generous and that nice that they are willing to give you a free play just because we said you've gone over. So head over and do that. Must be over the age of 18 and gamble responsibly, please. And now, if you are over the age of 18 and you are willing to gamble responsibly, you may continue listening to this episode. If not, but I can't stop you from listening and taking in the information. Well, you do. I just you can't put it into proper action. Let's have a look at some of our picks for the week. I've got three that I think are they're my budget picks for the week, but I'm going to let you two go first. Sam, have you got your picks for this week on Fantasy Game Day?
Let me have a look. I did have some people. Um,
Well, while you're having a look,
Yeah.
Karl.
just trying to find mine.
Okay, so I've got two people on my radar. This ain't going to be bargain bin basement type of pick, so I really do apologize for this, but I think you should be going for these guys anyway. So my first name on this list, he's around about 5,600 points, Brian Thomas Jr. He's 8th in yards after the catch, 9th in deep targets. BTJ is going to crush every Jaguars franchise rookie wide receiver record. And just hear me out here. Brian Thomas Jr. is on pace for 71 receptions, 1,113 yards, 8 touchdowns. Jacksonville's rookie records have been 64 receptions, which was Justin Blackman, 865 yards, Justin Blackman, and 6 touchdowns, Alan Hurts, and also BTJ. We've seen an increase in targets in 4 consecutive games for him. He's also set career highs in targets in back-to-back in back-to-back games. In addition to that, he's played 80% of snaps in each game since week 9, and that's not a bad thing either. So that one for BTJ, Brian Thomas Jr., is 5,600 points. And the other one I'm going to throw out there, and I really don't want to choose a Cowboys player, but this guy has been going up in my trajectory for a while now. Rico Dowdle, running back for the Cowboys. They're playing Carolina. Averages 22 touches in his last 2 games. He averages 132 yards in his last 2 games. Dowdle quietly ranks top 15 in targets at 42. While primarily doing most of his damage on the ground, his Week 15 matchup is extremely enticing because Carolina's defense is ranked dead last in rushing yards allowed, second worst in rushing yards per carry, and second worst in rushing touchdowns allowed. The utilization is currently at an all-time high. His durability has been glaringly very good, and his snap percentage, which peaked last week at 77%, has increased in 4 consecutive games. It kind of feels like wheels up for Rico Dowdle moving forward in 2024. So here's my 2 picks there. Go for Brian Thomas Jr. and Rico Dowdle. Dowdle is 5,400 points.
Lovely, lovely. Sam, who have you got?
I prefer to go for the basement picks because you need them to be able to fit your lineups. As I've learned throughout the weeks I've been playing it, you always need to have some cheaper options.
Yes, it's all about the money, though. It's all about the money.
Well, it's the only way you can do it because you can't. If you want to have your Saquons and your Derrick Henrys, you've got to have the basement picks as well. One that I would probably go for in terms of as a cheaper option is someone who it has a good matchup, um, and has become quite a useful outlet, especially ones for sort of getting those sort of easy points that is sort of around the sort of the 10-point mark, the ones that you can have in your flex positions. Again, is going to be I would go with Marquez Valdez-Scantling. I do think I know that I've got a lot of issues with quarterbacks and such in the Saints, but he is a very good deep ball outlet, and he has been all season for them. I still think he has the opportunity to be that player that can sort of get you some good points. I think since the last 4 games that he's played, he's averaged around about what you're looking at about 16, 14, 15 points, something around there. So it's a good one to have as a flex position, as a cheaper pick. The other option, which and this is something that I'm not too mad about doing in terms of putting in a flex position if you want to have more expensive players, is sticking a tight end in at flex. And someone that I would be looking at in sort of that position would be Sam Laporta. Again, he's only 4,000, which as someone who scores solid points most weeks, if you're wanting someone who's slightly cheaper to go into that flex position, he is a potential option at 4,000. So he's one that I'm always looking at. K Dotton's another one. I know that his opposition isn't great in terms of potential point scoring, but again, he's only 3,400. So for me, tight end is a good one if you want to get someone who's always going to get receptions, but is also going to score relatively well in those flex positions. So K Dotton's the other one for me at 3,400. I'd make it, and again, I'd make an argument for Jake Ferguson. The only problem is he's had a poor season by all accounts, along with all the Dallas, but again, he's 3,400. So they're sort of mine.
My 3 that I've gone with, they don't seem as base. They're not as basement as Sam's, but for the position that I've got them in, they are relative. They are your more affordable pick. So I've gone with number 1 at 5,000. It is Ramondre Stevenson as the Patriots travel and face the Cardinals.
Jesus, that's ballsy. That's ballsy.
At 5,000 last week, the Cardinals gave up 172 yards to Charbonnet.
Charbonnet's a better running back than Stevenson, just to let you know.
Not all that much. He's a plodder.
Wow,
they are
that's
currently
disrespectful.
18th in the league versus the run in terms of yards per game. They are joint 13th in touchdowns to running backs given up. Now, my argument here is that he may not light up the game. I'm not coming out here and saying Ramondre Stevenson has a tendency to perform in games where he is favored. He's quite favorable in his matchups. He performs at a higher level. Again, he doesn't light up opponents, but he performs and he turns up and he puts points on the board. That's something I would expect out of Ramondre Stevenson this weekend. He's favorable in this matchup. I think he has more than enough opportunity, and given the price of some of the running backs and what you might get out of them, 5,000 for Ramondre Stevenson and what he will return you will not be too bad. The next one is wide receiver for the Buffalo Bills, Khalil Shakir, as they head to Ford Field and face the Detroit Lions. He is 5,400. Since week 7, he has had a bare minimum of 7 targets a game from Josh Allen. In that time, he's had 200-yard plus games. Now, the Lions may be 4th best in coverage as per PFF. But over the last 3 games, they have ranked 50.9, 54.1, and 62.3. They were their worst games of the season in coverage. A depleted Lions defense that has multiple players on IR and multiple people who played last week. Admittedly, this is a defense with 10 days rest now, But last week, multiple players like Jamal Adams turned up on the Monday morning and was playing on Thursday night. It wasn't the ideal position for this defense to be in. Expect yardage to get put up by Josh Allen, and Josh Allen, someone who's gonna know how to not expose the defense, but have fun and have a lot against this defense. He put up 42 points on Sunday night. Expect Khalil Shakir to get targets, get receptions, and put up yardage. Maybe even a couple of touchdowns. So for 5,400, I think that man could feast. Finally, my other one is Adam Thielen, who will play the Dallas Cowboys.
I got a feeling.
5,200 as a wide receiver. The Cowboys rank where per PFF in coverage out of
30
30.
seconds.
Oh, it's gonna
Not
be perfect.
32nd, not that
31st.
bad. Not
31st.
that bad. They are 29th
I
out
was
of
gonna
32
say
teams with a
25.
55.2 coverage grade per PFF on the season. That's 29th. In the last two games, Adam Thielen, the last two games where everyone's been saying Bryce Young has finally found himself and Bryce Young's been having a lot more success. Adam Thielen has seen 21 targets, 17 receptions, 201 yards, a touchdown combined in the last two games. This Dallas Cowboys team gave up 359 yards and three touchdowns versus the Bengals on Monday night to Ralph Wiggum. Imagine what Bryce Young's is only a little bit, but he's taller than Ralph Wiggum. No, I
He's
thought that one would have been received a bit better there.
he's he's also only 5,200 himself,
Exactly.
and he was my mid-range, slightly cheaper option at quarterback this week
Yeah,
because I think since he's come back, he's averaged what are we looking at? Say 17 points a game. So again, if you're looking for someone, if you're wanting to pick up more premium players in other positions, he'd be one to look at as
yeah,
well. Maybe, and it's I one thing I have found is it's always good to try and get a QB wide receiver or QB running back or QB wide receiver duo for these
yeah,
sorts of things. So if you're wanting two cheaper options, maybe go with a Young and Thielen
yeah,
mix.
definitely. And like I say, I think with the resurgence of Bryce Young, well, again, I keep saying resurgence. He's not had a pre-surgence to have a resurgence. This is the start of it all. But with the trajectory of Bryce Young, Adam Thielen has seen a lot of the fruits of that labour. So I would expect that to continue this weekend at only 5,200. So I will put my little black book there, and I will say that if you would like to face us and you would like to challenge us in our expert picks, um, head over to the link in the bio, link in the description, and come and face us. Use code HRDLE, hurdle without the U. Just not playing ball this time. Again. Just a reminder that is HRDLE, hurdle without the U.
There's no hurdle without you.
It's like you've read my mind. It's just incredible.
Right, Fletch,
Yes,
can I officially let go of my stress ball now?
I forgot you've had it. Right, I will give you. You can let
I'll
it
die
go.
on the I'll die on the hill. I will
You'll
die on
die on
this
the
hill.
hill. You, if
It was
No,
that's
a
what you,
hold
sensible
on,
pick.
hold on, hold.
It was a
Like we're still
sensible pick.
holding. We're still holding. We're
false
still holding.
start, false start, 5
We're still holding. We're still holding.
yards.
Right. This is very, very difficult for you, and that's fine. I'm giving you 30 seconds. I will let you have your say. You have 30 seconds. Three.
Thank you.
And when I say go, then you can let go of your stress ball and go. But you have
Right,
30 seconds.
right.
3, 2, 1, go.
Okay, Sam, last week you chose for our consumed people who does fantasy game day. You said one of the quarterbacks you put in your lineup is, of course, Will Levis, the Mayo Man, or the wet lettuce, as I prefer to call him. We had a little bit of an agreement, didn't we? If he got more than 17 fantasy points, I would apologise to you. And if he doesn't, well, I'll just say your advice was pretty poor. That was the number of points he put up in fantasy last week. 7. The Len Goodman number. 7 points, man. Come
Yeah,
on.
that's
Come
fine.
on.
Game over.
But you're also talking about a guy who was up against the worst defense in the league, or one of the worst defenses in the league. And every single week leading up to that, 4 weeks leading up to that, he'd scored 19 points, 15 points, 16 points, 16 points. At 4,200, he was a decent enough pick. You did not, no one was ever going to expect that he was only going to put up 7 points against Jacksonville.
So
If you was playing in a deeper fantasy league, i.e., like a 16 team league, all right, that's probably a risky pick that you would go for, okay? But the fact of the matter remains is Will Levis is not a good QB, and it is someone I
But
would
we're
dare
not
but
talking
not
about
for
fantasy. We're
but
talking about fantasy game day, where you have to pick
daily
based
fantasy.
upon the values. And the thing is, if you wanted to have the likes of Saquon Barkley in your team, you have to find a cheap option somewhere.
there
Will
was a cheap.
Levis at 4,200, he was the cheapest quarterback, I think, going into this that was going to be a starter. To know that he was going to get potentially look at getting you around the 15, 16 point mark based upon his previous games and the teams he was playing, it's a solid pick.
So
It
why can
didn't
you
work
take?
out,
So
which
why
is
can you
fine
get? So why can you get someone like Geno Smith in your lineup then?
because I
It
because
couldn't.
I
It
had
couldn't have. It couldn't have been that much. It couldn't have been that much more expensive than Levis.
So
no Gino was no Levis was significantly cheaper than anyone else. That's why I suggested him because he
and
was that cheap. I was surprised he was that cheap
and
to
the
pick up just an
Seahawks are
average
playing
15 points.
the Seahawks are playing the Cardinals, who, although the Cardinals are not exactly a lights up defense, they are significantly better than the Jacksonville Jaguars defense. And I will
And
say that
and Gino had also was one of the highest for point scoring in terms of throwing yardage or whatever it was. So he was
um,
always going to be significantly higher anyway.
but what I will say is hindsight is 2020, and at the end of the day, I sat there when Sam came out with when Sam said the name Will Levis, I was like, for fuck's sake. But also, when the reasoning came out, and you realise he's playing the Jacksonville Jaguars and he's only 4,200, I was sold on the fact that it was a decent idea because of who was against, because of the situationally, it made sense. It wouldn't have been my choice because that would be where I would have chosen to go premium rather than. But if I wanted to go premium elsewhere, I could see the argument. So I don't see any problem with this time last week. That seemed to me like the argument was a very good argument.
And I died on the hill when I picked the Jacksonville Jaguars to beat the Tennessee Titans last week.
You did, and that's something we will get into on Sunday on the YouTube channel with our pick'ems. Because with that in mind, I've let you have your moment. I've let you get on your soapbox. We are now going to throw this over to come join us on Sunday for our pick'ems, mine and Carl's and Sam's. Come join us, the review team, even on Tuesday morning as they review the games from this weekend. College football on Thursday, and we'll be back with you at the same time next week. Gentlemen, have a lovely week. Enjoy your weekend of football. Get a Saturday, a nice calm Saturday this week. Well, which is nice.
I don't.
Well, did you want to say something there, Carl, before we go?
Will Levis's ass. Good night.